The storm rolled across the frozen valley long before dawn, turning the sky into a swirling wall of white. The wind howled like a restless beast, rattling the wooden walls of the small hut perched on the ridge. Inside, a single human sat beside, a dim heater rubbing warmth back into his hands. His name was Rowland, a quiet frontier scout sent to study the strange winter patterns of this remote moon. He had expected harsh weather, isolation, silence. He had not expected anyone else to be alive out here. When the door burst open, he thought the storm itself had come crashing in. A shape stumbled in with the snow, cloaked in thick fur, trembling from the cold. Rowland jumped to his feet as the figure collapsed against the inside wall. She was breathing hard, shivering fiercely. Only when she pushed back her hood did he see the truth. She was not human. Her skin held a faint shimmer like moonlit stone. Her eyes were large and bright, shaped like teardrops. A thin line of bioluminescent markings traced across her cheeks. She stared at him with terror twisting her features. Rowland raised his hands slowly, palms open. Calm gestures, non-threatening. The alien woman pressed herself deeper into the corner, as if she had stumbled into the den of a predator. The wind roared outside again, sealing the hut with a dense blanket of snow. She was trapped inside with him now. Rowland spoke softly. He kept his voice low and steady. He leaned slightly away from her, so she would not feel cornered. She trembled. Harder. Her breathing quickened. She looked as if she was considering bolting back into the blizzard, despite how deadly the cold was. She clearly feared him more than the storm. Rowland knew he needed to act carefully. He moved to the heater and slid it slightly toward her, keeping a wide distance. She flinched, but the warmth caught her attention. She hesitated. Her gaze moved between him and the heater. The instinct for survival finally won. She crawled, little closer to the warmth, but her eyes never left him. Rowland waited. He did not speak again for a long time. He knew that fear this intense could shatter at a single wrong move. The heater's dim glow lit her face more clearly now. He noticed the frost clinging to her hair, the redness in her fingers, the cracked skin from exposure. She had been out in the storm far longer than any being should endure. After several minutes, the tension in her rigid posture loosened slightly. She let out a slow breath, then another. The danger that filled her eyes faded from terror to worry. Confusion. Rowland gently retrieved a thermal blanket from a shelf and placed it halfway between them. He stepped back immediately. She eyed it as though it might explode. Then, slowly, she pulled it toward herself. Her shoulders dropped with the warmth. Rowland finally spoke again. His tone was even softer this time. She listened, though she clearly did not understand his words. She answered in her own language, a melodic blend of tones and hums. He shrugged to show he did not know what she meant. She blinked, puzzled. More hums, more melodic sounds. He shook his head again. She exhaled in frustration. Then she tapped her chest. She spoke a name. Lyra. Rowland pointed to himself. Rowland. The woman hesitated, then gave a small nod. She repeated his name slowly, studying his face as if searching for hidden danger. As the storm raged outside, the hours passed in quiet tension. Rowland made sure she had space, warmth, and rest. Lyra watched everything with suspicion, yet she no longer cowered. The heater flickered. The storm's roar softened. Then something new happened. Lyra pressed a hand to her chest. She formed a gesture in the air, slow and deliberate. It resembled a circling motion followed by a sharp downward line. When Rowland only stared in confusion, she repeated it. Then she pointed to the door. Rowland shook his head. He opened a small window shutter for her. The outside world was nothing but a roaring white void. There was no way she could survive out there. Lyra looked devastated. Her eyes dimmed like a lantern losing fuel. Rowland understood. She was trying to say she was running from something, not just seeking shelter, fleeing. She spoke again, more urgently. Her tone carried fear and desperation. Rowland could not understand the words, but he understood the emotion. He handed her a canteen. She sniffed it cautiously, then drank. Her hands shook. She set the canteen down and drew something in the frost on the table. A shape, a towering figure. With long limbs and an angular body, Rowland leaned closer. She drew a second shape, smaller, broader. Then she drew flames around the first shape and tremors around the second. Enemies, a conflict. She wiped the drawings away with a trembling. Swipe. Her chest heaved. Rowland finally understood something simple and vital. She was not afraid of him specifically. She was afraid of his kind. Humans. Something had happened between her people and a group of humans somewhere out on this frozen moon. Maybe a misunderstanding. Maybe worse. Whatever it was, Lyra believed he was dangerous because she believed. All humans were. Rowland raised both hands again. He slowly set his tools aside, showing empty palms. He moved them away from himself, so she could see he held no weapon. Lyra hesitated, then touched a glowing mark on her wrist. A tiny pulse of light rippled along her skin. She studied Rowland again. Maybe she could sense something about him. Maybe she was reading his intentions in subtle cues. Either way, her posture softened further. Hours turned into more hours. They exchanged simple gestures, simple drawings, simple understanding. Rowland learned that she came from a nomadic tribe native to this moon's northern plains. They lived far from human settlements and rarely made contact. Recently, something had driven them south. The storms had grown worse. Strange tremors shook the ice. Large machines prowled the plains. When Rowland heard that part, he sat up straighter. His own research team had deployed seismic drills weeks ago. Massive metallic machines meant to bore deep into the ice to study what lay beneath. Lyra had likely seen them and mistaken them for weapons. Huge shaking towers tearing the ground. Part metal beasts flooding her homeland. No wonder she ran. No wonder she feared him. Rowland rubbed his face, guilt creeping through him. Humans had caused this fear without even realizing it. Lyra noticed his expression shift. She tapped his shoulder lightly to get his attention and pointed at the heater. It was a small gesture, a reminder to stay warm, a sign she no longer saw him as a monster. As the storm weakened, the blizzard's roar faded to a distant murmur. Lyra rose on unsteady legs. She peeked out the small window. The winds were weakening, but the valley still churned with snowdrifts, taller than a person. They would not be leaving any time soon. She turned back to Rowland and hesitated. She looked around the cramped hut, clearly uncomfortable with the small space. He understood. He opened the supply chest, pulled out a structural beam, and propped open a second compartment of the hut to give her more room. She blinked in surprise at the gesture. Slowly she stepped into the extra space. The longer she stayed, the more her tension eased. Rowland cooked a basic meal on a small portable stove. The scent filled the hut. Lyra sniffed it with curiosity. When he offered her a bowl, she hesitated again. Then she took it carefully and tasted it. Her eyes widened. She made a quiet sound of approval. Rowland laughed lightly, then caught himself. She tilted her head, confused. He stopped laughing immediately to avoid misunderstanding. She took another bite, then another. Soon the bowl was empty. Rowland offered seconds. She declined with a polite gesture. They sat in silence again for a while. But this silence was different. Not hostile, not fearful, natural, steady. When night fell, the heater dimmed. Lyra curled in the insulated corner, her breathing even. Rallen kept watch for hours. He had never imagined sheltering an alien woman who feared him more than death itself. Yet now she slept peacefully under his protection. The next morning this storm had mostly passed. The sky was pale gray. The wind had calmed enough to travel. Lyra stood by the door, her posture tense yet resolved. She pointed toward the plains. Rallen nodded. He packed supplies. When he opened the door, a gust of cold air swept in, but it was manageable. They stepped into the fresh snow. Lyra took the lead, guiding him across the ridge. Rallen followed but kept distance, allowing her freedom. After an hour, they reached a cliff overlooking the plains. Rallen saw the truth immediately. His team's machines were scattered across the ice, towering structures wrapped in cables and lights. They churned and drilled. Tremors rippled across the ground. Lyra flinched at the sight. Rallen felt the weight of responsibility settle heavily on him. He raised a hand to signal her to wait. Then he tapped his communicator. Static. Interference from the storm. He climbed a nearby ridge to try again. The signal finally connected. He reported the situation, described the misunderstanding, urged the team to shut down the drills until they could initiate peaceful contact. At first, the command center hesitated. The research timeline was strict, but the risk of conflict was too great. Finally, they agreed to halt operations. Rallen returned to Lyra and pointed toward the machines. Their lights dimmed. Their engines slowed. One by one, the machines powered down. The ice stopped trembling. Lyra stared in awe. For the first time she looked at him without fear. She touched her chest. Then she touched his. A gesture of gratitude. Rallen nodded. The horizon brightened as the storm clouds drifted away. A calm settled over the plains. Lyra motioned for him to follow her further north. They walked together across the snow until they reached a cluster of crystalline shelters.